Nebraskans with past felonies are taking legal action to get their voting rights restored.
It comes after an opinion by the state's attorney general stopped their ability to get registered. Our Taylor Johnson is on your side with what's at stake if the opinion is upheld.
It was like that game when you were little, takesy backsies. That's what they did.
After the passing of LB 20 in April, TJ King of Omaha was excited to vote again. But it all changed when Secretary of State Robert Evnen ordered election offices to stop registering voters with past felonies. The move was made after Attorney General Mike Hilgers deemed the law unconstitutional.
This was definitely something that I didn't foresee coming at all. If somebody would have told me that, even when somebody told me about it, I was like, you're lying. But it happened.
Jeremy Jonak of Wood River is another Nebraskan hoping to practice his civil freedom after paying his debt to society.
I was extremely excited that this law passed and I would be eligible to participate. And, conversely, very disappointed with the Secretary of State's decision. It was just crushing.
Now, King and Jonak are fighting back. They're two of four plaintiffs suing Secretary of State Robert Evnen and Douglas and Hall County election commissioners. The suit was filed by the ACLU of Nebraska, the American Civil Liberties Union, and a national law firm. The nonprofit Civic Nebraska is also part of the lawsuit. They say the decision stifled their voter registration efforts.
In having to reverse our plans, Civic Nebraska has incurred unexpected and unnecessary costs. And the fallout from the Secretary of State's actions has created confusion and diverted our focus away from this core mission.
According to experts, this decision affects tens of thousands of Nebraskans over a span of almost 20 years.
Because when you look at how many people are released yearly from the Nebraska Department of Corrections, and then how many people are serving like felony probation sentences who never go in to the prison system, that's an astronomical number for us to say that your voting right is just automatically done away with.
And with the high-stakes election year, advocates are hoping the law will be sustained.
Nebraska is a state of second chances, and we just hope that the courts uphold that.
On your side in Omaha, Taylor Johnson, 6 News.
Attorney General Mike Hilgers said only the Nebraska Board of Pardons can restore Nebraska's voting rights after a felony conviction. The board, made up of Hilgers, Secretary Evnen, and Governor Pillen, meet next month.